I have the pleasure of advocating tonight on behalf of the Pottstown Cluster of Religious Communities. You're probably aware that they have had for 5 years a presence on North Franklin Street at 57. In July of last year, they bought another building which is adjacent to that. The address there is 61 Franklin Street. And they would like to incorporate that new building into their current operation. In order to do so, to use the building as they would like, they need zoning relief. I have filed on their behalf a zoning application. The matter will go before the zoning hearing board, I believe now on May 4th. My objective this evening is to explain to you a little bit about what the cluster does, what the cluster proposes to do at its new location, some of the things the cluster does not do, and to hopefully dispel a few misconceptions, and at the conclusion ask you to support the cluster in its effort to obtain zoning relief. The first slide identifies the mission of the organization. Through interfaith cooperation, the cluster provides tangible services, support, and spiritual guidance to address basic needs of persons within and beyond the greater Pottstown area. They coordinate programs and referrals to help clients improve their overall stability. This evening I have with me several board members from the organization. Seated at the table is Barbara Willamy. She's the executive director of the organization. And there are other members, I believe, who are in support this evening as well. The history of the cluster is that in 1967, it was formed basically from a group of churches. It became incorporated in 1971. From 88 to 2011, operated at 137 Walnut Street. In January of 2010, acquired the property at 57 North Franklin Street, and has been operating there ever since. I mentioned that in July they bought 61 North Franklin Street. The programs, an overview is that they run at that site a food pantry, clothes closet, supportive and financial assistance, a chaplaincy, a program called the Getting Ahead Initiative, a program called Bridges Out of Poverty, another program called Housing Resource Center, the Wise Food Shopper Program, and community meals. The pantry is depicted in that photograph there. People, no more than 28 people a day. Each person is only allowed to come once per month. They receive food for approximately a week, mostly dry goods. There is no food sort of on the spot. No prepared food, no cooked food, things like that. In 2015, towards the bottom there, you can see, sorry, I'm only pointing to one side of the table. It'll be tougher for Mr. Proxel. But in 2015, served 2,600 individuals. 38% of those are children. Those are children that live in the borough of Pottstown. They attend the schools. Their families are benefited, and they themselves are benefited by having clothing, food, and so forth. Dry goods provide clothing, again depicted in the picture. This is what the inside of the cluster building looks like. People organize out front, enter orderly, are served their food, and leave, many of them on foot, not a lot of car traffic. Business operates regular business hours, 8:30 to 4:30. Does not create noise, no light pollution, no excessive police calls, really just quietly goes about its business. I point out to you here, provides support families to the Pottstown School District, particularly for those that can't afford uniforms, may be able to obtain a uniform for the school at the cluster dry goods store. Next, financial assistance and support services. Some of those programs are listed there. Next is the chaplaincy, provides spiritual guidance. I have 6 chaplains representing different congregations. This is not a requirement, it's just something that's available. Next is the Getting Ahead Initiative. It's an educational program designed for persons living in poverty to investigate the effects of poverty, establish a future plan, Currently, it's a 16-week workshop that's currently in the 7th week, and presently they've had 44 individuals who have graduated from this workshop series. These are 44 people who live in the borough of Pottstown. Next is the Bridges Out of Poverty program. Again, an educational component, increasing community understanding of the effects of poverty, building partnerships, and provide programs to schools, county collaborations, water centers, etc. They have a housing resource center. Again, the cluster presently and the new property next door does not house people. They don't put people up. There are no temporary overnight shelters or anything of the sort. It's more of an educational and a collaborative effort to get people help that they need, who are struggling either with homelessness or poverty. Positive outcomes listed on the bottom here: increase in income, connection services, and discharges to more permanent housing. The Wise Food Shopper program, again, educational component, teaches about nutrition labeling. I used to serve on the Health and Wellness Foundation. I know the Health and Wellness Foundation is a big supporter of the cluster and the pantry.
High Street, and turn right onto South Hanover Street.
Community meals, I think the last in this series, feeds a lot of folks, but it's not done on premises. This is essentially a volunteer effort listed here on the slide. 5 different locations, all off-site. I know that several, if not all of them, are churches, run by 30 different volunteer groups, and it fed in excess of 12,000 individual meals last year. About the business. Business employs 19 people, has over 300 volunteers committed to their work, 33 local congregations. It's hard to go any place in the borough of Pottstown, have any event that you don't hear they sponsor or support the cluster. Serves a very important need to the community. And probably most important of these slides, and I think this goes to dispel a misconception, is that 99% of the clients served in the pantry report having a 19464 zip code. So these folks are not, busing in from Philadelphia. They are, for the vast, almost exclusive majority of these folks, local. And here's another, on this page, another very important statistic at the bottom. It says that over the past 2 years demonstrate a decrease in the number of households served across the borough. So in other words, by buying next door, shouldn't have the misconception that they are thriving in their business and they're serving more and more people. The numbers have essentially been flat. There's a different reason for wanting to use next door. So let's get to that. Why did they buy the building next door? First of all, look at that building. It is a magnificent building. I believe that it was built in 1887. It's known as the Weinman Mansion. But it has essentially outlived its useful life. That is a single-family residence. It does not comport with current zoning. It had fallen into significant disrepair. And they bought it because it is simply right next door. Over time, they will have the wherewithal to fix it up. And it is suitable, very suitable for office space. That's primarily what they intend to do. While we're on that picture, I think history is somewhat important too, and I can't go back to 1887, but I believe around 1975 it was purchased by an outfit and run as a group home, known as Alternatives. It was that for 20 years. After that, for maybe a 10-year period, a church owned it, and I'm not exactly sure what transpired in there. I don't really know, but it was bought by an individual in 2007. He filed an application with the borough to turn it back into a single family or maybe a 2-unit residence, but he was unable to make a go of that. He, in any event, the Bank of America took the property back, I think, in 2010, and it's been vacant ever since. It sits, it is deteriorating, it has missing shingles, it has a hole in the roof. It needs to be repointed. There are significant cracking in between all that beautiful stone. The porch is falling. The heating system is had to be completely replaced. It needs some TLC, and If the cluster didn't buy it, it would appear it was going to remain that way for a long time because no one else made any effort to purchase the property. Here's another misconception that someone was going to buy it and turn it into a B&B. And that, although that's partly true, there was an individual who expressed some interest in that. She and her husband quickly learned that there was no way that that property was ever going to be a B&B. The acquisition cost, the restoration and rehab costs would simply be prohibitive. They would have been into it well in excess of $500,000. And given the surrounding area on that section, I have talked with this individual. She's likely to testify at the zoning hearing. This property was not bought out from under her. They had no desire to do that after expressing some initial interest. Next slide. What do they intend to use it for? Administrative offices, principally. Meeting space, offices for our work and Pottstown Housing Resource Center, and educational programs. The cluster is not, and Barb Willoughby, at the end, you're welcome to ask questions, not anticipating hiring new people. They have just sort of overstuffed their present location with clothing and food and staff. They have people working in makeshift offices and things like that. So this will allow them to have a better use of the pantry space, and over in the next building, office space. So one might think office would be a permitted use, and in some cases it is. And just hold that thought, we'll come back to it. More specifically, on the specific floors, third floor, administrative offices, second floor, support service staff offices, including the housing program, and on the first floor, it would be available for meeting space, board, committee meetings, staff, volunteer, client educational meeting space, things like that. Next. Probably no secret, they paid a little over $100,000 for the building. Thus far, have spent $27,000 just fixing it up. I think that's primarily heating. The heating system was non-functioning, essentially replaced. Hole in the roof. You'll see some photos here in a second. They have a substantial number of volunteers who dedicate serious time to the organization and this project, logging already over 132 hours, clean up, addressing items as a result of borough inspection. Next slide. The Borough of Pottstown, I know, like the school district, is concerned that this organization is a nonprofit. Property they acquire is generally exempt from taxes. I believe it was in October of last year, at least that's the letter I saw, the Borough of Pottstown communicated with, I don't know if it was most or all nonprofits, by way of a letter asking for something referred to as a pilot pledge. That is simply an acronym for payment in lieu of taxes. And in very short order, this organization responded favorably and has volunteered, committed in writing, you'll see the paper here in a second, that they will pay, as requested, 25% of the tax bill they would have paid if they were not a non-exempt organization. Bullet point 2, committed to supporting families in the community. Bullet point 3, want to be active partners in the community, including a program called Pottstown Cares. Next slide shows the building again on the left. Property is located in the first ward. Mr. Prosco was invited to come and get information from the cluster. I know that he did that. I know at least one other council member was invited as well. And this is an open invitation to anyone in council who wants to know more about, see in person, just call the cluster, call me, make good arrangements to come. There's nothing to hide there. They're very proud of what they do. We'll be glad to show you firsthand what it is that they do. On the right side of that picture is captioned the carriage house. It sits behind this building. It's in pretty good shape. It's actually quite a nice looking building. Most likely the cluster would use that for additional office space as well. There have been some preliminary discussions with the Borough of Pottstown about outfitting its current location and or either both of these properties with cameras for police. I think that comes through some sort of community grant. And the cluster would, of course, be willing to do that if that's the wish of the borough. There may be other municipal uses, maybe some use the Borough of Pottstown would like to see that building used for, and we'd entertain those discussions too. I'm not really at liberty to say quite what it is I'm thinking, but there may be something that could actually benefit the Borough of Pottstown. The next photo is the rear of the property. This is on this slide you see just to the right here where I'm pointing with the pointer is the current cluster building. To the left is another really quite a grand property. There are two, look to be probably built somewhere around the same time, and both rather grand when they were first constructed, I'm sure. The difference is the one that we're talking about today is a single family property. It is not cut up into apartments, and it would just again be very unlikely that someone would buy it for their residence, A, because of the cost and all of the rehab and upkeep associated with it. And to demonstrate that fact, I refer you to right next door. This property is owned by a gentleman, Robin Hoska, I think, Hesta, who I have spoken with. He owns that property and one directly across the street. And his properties are in fact cut up. That beautiful Victorian home just to the left from the rear of our property is 6 apartment units. And across the street, he owns 2 properties that collectively 8 units. This is surrounded by anything but single family residences. Inside the property, it looks quite magnificent. It really is. There's a long story, I think, about the woodwork, most of which I don't know, but from what I do know, I'm intrigued, and maybe someday the whole story will be told. The windows with different kind of glass there. Next slide. Same up to the left, you have a room that has sort of rounded in shape, a wooden fireplace. To the right photograph, again, stained glass, a very unique and rather cool-looking room there. But what you don't see in the pictures, you will see in the next couple of pictures. So the building has fantastic potential. It would be a shame to let it deteriorate. This organization will be able to restore it over time, hopefully to its full grandeur. What you can't see in the earlier pictures, you do see in these pictures up close, are substantial termite damage, wood floors that are cracking and falling through. In the next picture, same kind of thing. The whole basement was really trashed, probably from water getting all the way from the 3rd floor. The whole heating system has been replaced. You don't see it in these photos, but this is just evidence of some of the work that has been done since. On the 3rd floor, you get this large hole in the ceiling. There's also a hole in the roof, so water's coming through. And it's really a shame that it's sitting this way. It's been this way. No one else bought it. This is an opportunity to restore it and make a reasonable use of the property. You have the ceiling on the next floor, same thing, a lot of paint damage, water damage, and so forth. The next slide is the borough pledge that we signed. It's not something we've done recently. This was back in November of last year. We committed to pay the borough of Pottstown $1,241 a year because it seemed it's a reasonable request, seems like the right thing to do, and most importantly, we do benefit from borough services to some extent. When you plow the streets, that helps us. When you should they ever need to call the police, they call the police. There's a little bit of a different story with the school district. I intend to make a presentation to them as well. I don't think we'll be as quick. First of all, the school taxes are substantially more, but there's no children that we have. We don't really benefit from the services provided by the school district. So just sharing that with you in case someone was wondering. The next photo depicts the tax information for this property. I don't know that, first of all, it's a little out of focus, and I apologize for that, but it just shows the current assessed value, and that's how the tax for the pilot amount was calculated. The next page depicts a portion of your zoning ordinance. So this property is located in the traditional town neighborhood, the intent of which is to preserve and enhance historic neighborhoods that are predominantly residential, but also have a small number of stores and offices mixed in with the housing. So there's a reference there to offices, which are permitted. But under your permitted uses, number 2 there, you only list essentially dwellings. And again, in order to be an apartment, you need a minimum of 2,400 on the first floor. You can also have a single-family detached, and you can have a single-family semi-detached. Those are the only permitted uses. There's no way this could ever be a semi-detached property. It is, in fact, already constructed. It takes up a large part of the lot as it is. It can't be apartments either, so it could be a single-family detached, but I represent to you that it's functionally obsolete. There's not anyone that's going to put $500,000 roughly into that property to make it their residence. Maybe in 1887, not today. Here's another two important points. Conditional uses are listed there. I know you had a conditional use hearing. You probably know that conditional use is essentially an allowed use. So this could be a social club. Think Yelps or something like that. We weren't allowed to make what we think is a reasonable use of the property, could wind up with a social club there if we had to divest and sell it. That may be profitable for somebody. The next slide, skip to the bottom, number 6, it says special exception. Special exception is very similar to a conditional use. Also essentially an allowed use subject to reasonable conditions. So here again, that dwelling could be a boarding home or a group home as it was for a long time. So if we don't get the zoning relief and can't use it as we proposed, it's conceivable that someone will make it a boarding house, which I have to think is something you would find less favorable than what's proposed here. Under existing building conditional uses, you do have, for any existing dwelling, you can have an office, and it says except client-based social service provider. That's really what this case is about, because your zoning officer has determined that this proposed use is a client-based social service provider, which, if you scroll to the next screen, I think is the definition of a client-based social service provider, which I don't, at least in my humble opinion, we are not. I've explained to you we are essentially proposing administrative offices and the like, and this definition says a type of office consisting of a facility that provides on-site assistance to persons with limited ability for self-care. The term includes a facility that provides psychological, psychiatric, and or medical problems, employment, welfare, and other forms of assistance, essentially none of which we do. So I think it's a little bit of a just difference of opinion on the proposed use, but that was the decision of your zoning officer. That's why we're before the zoning hearing board. The next slide, this is very hard to interpret. I'll quickly tell you, this is High Street here, and the tan area is all the TTN zoning district, and these gray properties in here, I guess are part of the downtown. So the property in question, this is the current cluster, and right next to it is here. We're in the TTN. The zoning allowed things are as I just described. But this type of proposed use is allowed in the FO, which is the flex office. So to me, it seems, again, a little silly that we can't have a social service provider office there, but we can walk 1 block to High Street and maybe a half a block to this alley, and then we're in an area where it would be an allowed use. So, yeah, again, I couldn't begin to explain how the zoning ordinance works and things like that, but, if you couldn't be where we want to be, could be across the street, would still be tax exempt, wouldn't have any obligation to make a payment in lieu of tax. And I just think that what we propose to do makes more sense in the proposed location. The last slide lists what a variance is. There are 5 criteria that one must demonstrate to the zoning hearing board convincingly in order to be granted a variance. I won't bore you with the details. This will be for another day. But I would say that there are unique physical circumstances of this property, principally its size. It is just too grand to be a single-family residence or any of the other allowed uses under the zoning ordinance. So we've come full circle now. I'm back to the point where we're going before the zoning hearing board in about a month. We would like the Borough of Pottstown to issue a letter in support. There are a number of other service organizations, churches, and the like that I anticipate having letters of support at the time of that hearing. They will be local politicians. Mr. Rafferty has submitted a letter in the past. We fully anticipate getting a letter. I don't have commitments from any of those folks, but I'm quite sure that the Health and Wellness Foundation, likely the Ryan Costello, Mr. Rafferty, and such others as that, community leaders, Dick Franz is here this evening. He has already authored a letter of support. Again, I won't bore you with that, but we will have substantial community support, and we're going to make the building what it is we believe a reasonable use. And we'll gladly answer any questions that you might have now, and I apologize for having my back to you for most of the whole time.
I have a couple, but can I just start with a couple things, Mr. Picardi? I'm never really impressed when another governing body dictates the tax exemption status in the borough of Pottstown, because the state and the county, they're not affected the way we are when something comes off the tax rolls. The house was owner occupied, and the person that couldn't make a go of it couldn't make a go of it because he committed suicide, not because, you know, he fell into financial abuse. So
I think you're making my case from here. Carry on.
I don't want to even assume the reasons that he had done that. I did, you know, if you want to assume that it was financial, I do not know, so I wouldn't even try to guess what was in the gentleman's mind.
That's why I didn't bring it up.
Okay. So, you had said that you serve the 19464 zip code for most of your service for your clients. Is that because they came to the 19464 zip code for services, or were they already rooted here with family or previously living here?
I don't know if she can answer that question, but I'll turn to Barbara, who has the most experience. She's been with the organization for a long time.
So we don't do demographics to understand how long, well, the question that we do ask people is how long have they lived in the borough. They need to prove residency for us to receive services of 3 months, to be an active person in terms of getting services on a regular basis. Beyond that, I can't tell you. I can tell you though that 5 years ago, when we purchased the building that we're currently in, we mapped out where all of our clients were living and discovered that the clients that we were serving were all living in the community in which we currently exist. And many of those clients are still clients that we're serving. We do see new people. And we will serve people that don't live in the community, but we do not continually serve those people. If somebody comes to us, we're a food pantry. We have an abundance of an opportunity to feed people, and so if somebody shows up on our door and they're hungry, we're going to give them food. I don't care where they live. If they live outside of this district, we will guide them to where they need to go, and we will be encouraging them to go to that district. They can't just keep coming back to us. On the Housing Resource Center side, we have, yes, housed people in Pottstown, but they are largely people who have family, who have jobs, who have connections to this community with services, and we're trying to make them whole in their lives.
Is there any kind of requirements for an individual or a family? Because you said that you offer job training and educational programs and that type of thing. Are there requirements for those people that are entering your programs to take those educational or job training programs that you offer services for?
We have one, so this year we instituted a program with our oil assistants that we required people to, on one of the slides you'll see that I wrote that we had a pay it forward program. We required people to contribute either a monetary contribution to be able to pay it forward to another family. So they gave us a minimal monetary requirement or payment, or if they truly felt that they could not do that, we required them to participate in a 3-hour, one of our workshops for our UP3 program. Each of those sessions are approximately 3 hours, and the particular session that we made them participate in was the one that dealt with income to debt ratio, budgeting, and opportunities for them to better understand how to manage their money.
Do we know what the success rate is that they have learned to better manage their money and they are, or what the success rate is for anybody that is getting a job or a living wage job from your program, from the benefit of your programs?
So we are working, so the oil program was a new, that Pay It Forward program, this is the first year that we did that, so no, I don't have data on, I can't give you long-range data on what's happening with those people. The UP3 program, or the Getting Ahead program that Mr. Picardi mentioned that we have 44 graduates from, we do have data from that group of individuals because we're trying to continually, after the program is done, the workshops are done, our intention is to continue to work with them as long as we are able to and as long as they will engage with us to continue to help them to their road of stability. So we do have data of a number of them, and I'm sorry I don't have these specific statistics with me, but a number of them who are gainfully employed. We have a number of them who have actually moved on and moved out of the county to other opportunities. And we have a number of the clients that have participated in that program who are either volunteering in our office or volunteering in other community opportunities for them to, again, be kind of paying it forward and giving back as they're continuing on their road to stability.
So stability it's a very, kind of like there's a lot of definition in that stability. So stability, to me, I'm kind of looking for statistics on stability of somebody getting ahead and being able to come from the program to be able to obtain a living wage job, which we know are very scarce in the borough of Pottstown, and then moving on successfully from there, as opposed to, and I know that there are a certain segment of the population that have disabilities that they're not going to be able to access gainful employment or living wage employment. I understand that. So I'm just looking for maybe the statistics of the differences between those groups from your programs.
So I appreciate that you came to our office a few weeks ago, and when you were in the office, I think I shared with you the data that I do have on our Housing Resource Center demonstrating that we have about a 76% rate of actually assisting people that we're helping to move into housing to graduate from that program to being able to sustain their own permanent housing. We're helping them get back on their feet in whatever their form of stability is. Some of them, it's working.